Throughout history, countless conquerors have sought glory through the lands they defeated, but few possessed the same hunger for discovery as Alexander the Great. To his enemies, he was a relentless military genius who brought entire kingdoms to their knees. To his followers, he was a visionary ruler who believed the world was far larger than the borders drawn on ancient maps. After defeating the mighty Persian Empire and expanding his influence deep into the eastern territories, Alexander continued pushing his armies toward regions that remained unknown to the civilizations of the Mediterranean. Victory alone was never enough for him. Every mountain range beyond the horizon represented a challenge. Every unexplored territory represented a mystery, and every forgotten legend carried the possibility of a discovery that could change humanity's understanding of the world. It was during one of these eastern campaigns that Alexander and his army entered a vast jungle that had remained untouched by the great civilizations of the ancient world. The region appeared on no reliable maps. Only scattered stories from travelers and local legends described what existed beyond its borders. Some spoke of ancient ruins hidden beneath the trees. Others claimed that entire kingdoms had vanished into the wilderness, leaving behind nothing except forgotten stones and unanswered questions. Alexander had encountered many legends during his campaigns, and most had eventually been proven exaggerated or completely false. However, something about these stories convinced him that this jungle concealed something unusual. He was right. The journey into the jungle became one of the most difficult marches Alexander's army had ever experienced. The Macedonian soldiers had crossed burning deserts where water was scarce, climbed mountain passes covered in snow, and fought battles against armies many times their size. They were experienced warriors who had survived conditions that would have destroyed ordinary armies. Yet the jungle presented a completely different challenge. The landscape seemed designed to resist human exploration. The enormous trees created a world of endless shadows, their branches forming a ceiling so dense that sunlight rarely reached the ground. Thick vines covered ancient trunks, roots spread across the soil like walls, and every path had to be cleared manually before the army could advance. The air was heavy with moisture, and the constant heat exhausted both men and animals. Armor that had protected soldiers on countless battlefields became a burden beneath the oppressive climate. Horses struggled through the muddy terrain, while supply wagons moved at a fraction of their normal speed. But the physical challenges were not what disturbed the soldiers most. It was the feeling that the jungle was avoiding them. The deeper they traveled, the less life they encountered. The usual sounds of a forest gradually disappeared. Birds became scarce. Animal tracks vanished. Even the smallest creatures seemed to retreat from their path. The jungle was not empty. It was as if the jungle was waiting. After several days of difficult travel, Alexander's scouts discovered something impossible hidden among the ancient trees. At first, they believed they had found the remains of a forgotten fortress. Dark shapes could be seen through the vegetation, partially covered by centuries of moss and roots. From a distance, the structure appeared to be another ruined monument from an ancient civilization. However, as Alexander approached, it became clear that this was unlike anything ever built by human hands. The structure rose from the jungle floor like the remains of a fallen mountain. Its enormous walls were formed from a material darker than iron and smoother than polished stone. Unlike the temples of Egypt or the palaces of Persia, there were no visible blocks, no carved pillars, and no evidence that individual pieces had ever been assembled. The entire structure appeared to be a single creation, a massive, seamless object buried beneath the jungle. Time had attempted to erase it. Trees had grown around it, roots had wrapped themselves across its surface, and entire sections had disappeared beneath layers of earth and vegetation. Yet the strange black material remained almost untouched, as if centuries had passed without leaving any mark upon it. The Macedonian engineers who examined the walls could not determine how such a structure had been created. The methods used by the greatest civilizations of their age were incapable of producing anything similar. The discovery challenged everything they believed about human history. The entrance was discovered after the soldiers cleared away layers of vegetation, covering the lower section of the structure. A massive opening stood partially destroyed, revealing a dark passage leading into the interior. The damage around the entrance suggested that the structure had suffered a catastrophic event long before Alexander's arrival. It did not look like a place abandoned by its builders. It looked like a place that had fallen. Because of the size and condition of the entrance, Alexander understood that bringing his entire army inside would be impossible. The passages beyond were too narrow, and the dangers within were unknown. Instead, he selected a small group of elite soldiers, experienced veterans who had survived campaigns across Greece, Egypt, and Persia. They carried weapons, supplies, and equipment necessary for exploration, while the rest of the army established a defensive camp outside the mysterious ruins. Before entering, Alexander looked once more at the impossible structure rising above the jungle. For the first time in many years, he was not looking at a kingdom waiting to be conquered. He was looking at a mystery. The moment Alexander crossed into the ruins, the outside world disappeared. The oppressive heat of the jungle was replaced by a cold, artificial atmosphere that seemed completely unnatural. The corridors inside were enormous, stretching far beyond what the exterior dimensions should have allowed. The walls curved smoothly overhead, reflecting the light from their torches in strange patterns. There were no signs of traditional construction, no carved decorations, no statues of rulers, no inscriptions celebrating victories. Instead, the walls were covered with strange symbols, unlike any language known to the ancient world. Some markings resembled geometric patterns. Others appeared to represent distant stars connected by precise lines. The design seemed less like writing and more like a form of knowledge recorded visually. Alexander and his companions had entered a place built by minds that understood the world differently. The first danger revealed itself only after they had traveled deep into the structure. A section of the floor shifted beneath one of the soldiers, triggering an ancient mechanism that caused the stone surface to collapse into a hidden shaft below. The group barely avoided disaster as the corridor revealed a massive opening, disappearing into darkness. The discovery changed their understanding of the ruins. This was not simply an abandoned structure. It was protected. The deeper they went, the more sophisticated the defenses became. Hidden mechanisms remained active despite thousands of years of silence. Sections of the walls moved with impossible precision. Ancient systems designed to prevent intruders continued functioning long after the civilization that created them had disappeared. The ruins seemed less like a forgotten temple and more like a machine waiting for someone to activate it. The expedition moved slowly, testing every step and examining every surface before continuing forward. Each chamber revealed new evidence that the builders possessed knowledge far beyond anything known in Alexander's time. Yet the greatest mystery remained unanswered. Who had created this place? And why had they hidden it beneath an endless jungle? After hours of exploration, Alexander's group reached a vast circular chamber deep beneath the surface. The room was unlike anything they had seen before. 12 enormous pillars surrounded a central platform covered in intricate markings. At the center of the platform rested a complex mechanism composed of several circular rings fitted together with impossible precision. For centuries, it had remained completely motionless, until Alexander arrived. As the explorers approached, the ancient structure suddenly responded. A faint blue light appeared beneath the surface of the platform. The symbols carved into the pillars slowly began to glow, spreading across the chamber like a network of hidden energy. The entire structure trembled. Something buried deep within the ruins had awakened. The soldiers watched as the rings at the center of the platform began to move for the first time in an age forgotten by mankind. Alexander had entered the ruin searching for the remains of a lost civilization. Instead, he had discovered something that had never belonged to Earth at all. And the ancient machine beneath the jungle was only beginning to reveal its secrets. The awakening of the chamber marked the beginning of a discovery that would have been impossible for Alexander and his soldiers to comprehend. They believed they had entered the remains of a forgotten civilization, a place built by unknown architects who had vanished from history. However, the deeper they traveled, the clearer it became that the structure beneath the jungle did not belong to any empire that had ever existed on Earth. The ancient mechanism at the center of the chamber continued activating, releasing energy through pathways hidden beneath the strange black material that formed the walls. The faint blue glow moved across the room with a purpose, connecting symbols and patterns that had remained dormant for countless generations. The explorers stood surrounded by a technology they could not explain. To them, it appeared almost magical. But it was not magic. It was science from an age beyond their understanding. As the central platform continued to awaken, a section of the chamber slowly opened, revealing a passage deeper into the structure. Unlike the earlier corridors, which showed signs of damage and decay, this new pathway appeared almost untouched by time. The walls were perfectly preserved. The surface remained smooth and reflective. No plants had managed to penetrate the material. No water had weakened the structure. It was as though this section had been protected from the passage of centuries. Alexander and his remaining soldiers continued forward, guided by the faint illumination spreading through the walls. The farther they traveled, the more the structure changed. The ruins no longer resembled an ancient temple. The architecture became increasingly unfamiliar. Large chambers appeared designed for purposes that no human civilization of the ancient world could recognize. Vast circular rooms, unusual platforms, and complex arrangements of unknown machinery suggested that the builders had not created a palace, a tomb, or a place of worship. They had created something functional, something that served a purpose. The explorers eventually reached a chamber containing enormous images displayed across the walls. At first, they appeared to be decorations, perhaps symbols representing the beliefs of a forgotten civilization. But as the light from the awakened structure spread through the room, the markings became clearer. They were not symbols of gods or kings. They were representations of the universe. The walls showed countless stars connected by intricate patterns. They displayed distant worlds, strange landscapes, and enormous structures floating beyond the boundaries of Earth. The meaning of these images was impossible for Alexander's expedition to understand, but their purpose was unmistakable. The builders of this place had not only studied the heavens, they had traveled among them. The discovery represented a truth far beyond the knowledge of the ancient world. While philosophers debated the nature of the stars and wondered what existed beyond the sky, the creators of this structure had already crossed that impossible distance. They had looked upon other worlds. They had journeyed among the stars. And somehow, their journey had ended beneath the jungle of Earth. As Alexander's group continued deeper, They reached a massive chamber filled with silent figures positioned along the walls. For centuries, they had remained motionless, covered by dust and forgotten by time. At first, they appeared to be statues. Their forms resembled armored warriors standing guard over the inner sections of the structure. Their bodies were made from materials unlike bronze or iron, and their designs combined the appearance of ancient armor with a precision that no human craftsman could achieve. However, as the awakened systems continued spreading through the ruins, the figures began to change. Small lights appeared beneath their protective coverings. Ancient mechanisms inside their bodies began moving again. The Guardians were not statues created to honor warriors of the past. They were machines. They had been waiting. The awakening of the Guardians transformed the chamber into a battlefield, unlike anything Alexander's soldiers had ever experienced. The mechanical defenders moved with a precision that seemed impossible. They did not fight like human warriors. They did not hesitate, react emotionally, or make mistakes caused by fear or exhaustion. Every movement was calculated. Every attack was deliberate. The Macedonian soldiers relied on the skills that had made them the most feared army of their age. Their discipline, coordination, and battlefield experience allowed them to survive against enemies they could not understand. But the Guardians possessed advantages beyond anything they had encountered. Their bodies resisted ordinary weapons. Their movements were faster and stronger than any human warrior. They had been designed for a purpose that was far beyond protecting a simple temple. They were created to defend something valuable. The battle forced Alexander's expedition deeper into the heart of the structure. The soldiers quickly realized that defeating the Guardians through strength alone was impossible. Instead, they relied on their intelligence and adaptability, using the environment around them to survive. The ancient machines were powerful, but they were also incredibly old. Thousands of years of silence had damaged their systems. Their movements, while still impressive, were not as perfect as they once had been. Small failures appeared in their mechanisms. Their armor showed signs of deterioration. The passage of time had weakened even these impossible creations. Slowly, the explorers gained ground. Not because they possessed greater technology, not because they were stronger, but because they possessed something the machines did not: the ability to adapt. After the final Guardian fell, the path toward the center of the structure was finally open. Beyond the chamber waited the most important room of all. The space was enormous, extending far beyond the limits of the previous chambers. At its center floated a large spherical object, surrounded by countless rings and mechanical structures. Unlike the defensive areas of the ruins, this chamber contained no weapons and no guardians. This was not a place designed to keep people away. It was a place designed to communicate. As Alexander approached the central device, the entire room responded. The sphere awakened. A wave of energy spread through the chamber, and the walls transformed into a vast display of light. The darkness above them disappeared. For a brief moment, the explorers stood beneath an artificial sky filled with thousands of stars. They were not looking at the heavens as seen from Earth. They were witnessing another perspective, another map, a view of the universe itself. The projection revealed an immense journey across the stars. Unknown planets appeared. Distant systems were marked. Routes between worlds were displayed through patterns of light. The creators of this structure had not been limited to one world. They had crossed the emptiness between stars. They had built civilizations beyond the reach of human imagination. Then the image changed. A single location began flashing repeatedly. The surrounding symbols indicated urgency. The The system displayed a message that could not be translated, but its meaning was clear even without understanding the language. Something had gone wrong. The structure was not simply a forgotten settlement. It was a vessel, a machine that had traveled from somewhere beyond Earth. And the signal displayed before Alexander was not a message of triumph. It was a distress beacon. The revelation was followed by catastrophe. The ancient systems that had awakened throughout the structure began failing. The energy flowing through the ruins became unstable. The walls trembled violently as forgotten machinery activated beyond its limits. The chamber that had survived for thousands of years began collapsing around them. The explorers had awakened something that could no longer sustain itself. The entire structure was coming apart. Alexander and his remaining soldiers began their desperate return through the ruins as corridors collapsed behind them. The same pathways that had protected their secrets for countless generations were now becoming their greatest danger. The ancient vessel was dying. The explorers raced through chambers that were breaking apart, escaping a machine that had been waiting beneath the earth since an unknown age. Behind them, the hidden systems that had maintained the structure began shutting down one after another. The light disappeared. The mechanism stopped. The impossible world they had discovered was returning to silence. When Alexander and the surviving soldiers finally emerged from the entrance, the jungle greeted them with the light of a new morning. The army waiting outside could only watch in confusion as their king returned from the impossible ruins beneath the trees. But before anyone could understand what had happened, the ground began to shake. Deep beneath the jungle floor, the enormous structure began sinking. The trees surrounding it collapsed as the earth opened beneath the ancient vessel. Sections of the black exterior disappeared into the ground as the jungle slowly reclaimed the secret that had remained hidden for thousands of years. From a distance, Alexander watched as the impossible monument vanished beneath the earth. Within a short time, only broken vegetation and disturbed soil remained. The jungle had hidden the discovery once again. Alexander ordered his army to continue its eastern march. The soldiers carried memories of a place that no historian would ever record. Some believed they had discovered the remains of a forgotten civilization. Others believed they had entered a place connected to forces beyond human understanding. The truth was far greater. The structure beneath the jungle had never been a temple. It had never been created by an ancient human kingdom. It was the remains of an alien spacecraft that had crossed the vast emptiness between stars before suffering a catastrophic failure and crashing onto Earth thousands of years before Alexander's birth. Its builders had disappeared. Its technology had slept. Its final distress signal had continued searching the universe for help. And then, after ages of silence, it was discovered by one of the greatest explorers humanity would ever produce. Alexander the Great had conquered kingdoms, crossed continents, and changed the course of history. But among all his achievements, the greatest discovery of his life was one that would never be written in any ancient scroll. For a brief moment, beneath an endless jungle in an unexplored corner of the world, humanity had touched a secret that belonged not to Earth, but to the stars.